Your four favorites are Queer, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, Beau is Afraid, and Call Me By Your Name. I know I do movie recommendations, not book recommendations, but all of these except for Beau is Afraid are adaptations of books I've read, and if by chance you haven't read the books, I highly recommend checking them out. But you've got two films about queer yearning directed by Luca Guadagnino, and two films that are surreal, disorienting, psychological journeys that explore themes related to loneliness, guilt, and regret. My top choice for you is All of Us Strangers, which involves a gay romance like Queer and Call Me By Your Name, but also has a psychological dreamlike quality to it, like I'm Thinking of Ending Things and Beau is Afraid. And this film involves a man reflecting on his relationship with his parents, and he sees them as younger versions of themselves, which reminds me of I'm Thinking of Ending Things because Jake's parents shift between younger and older versions of themselves. And the way the protagonist reflects on his relationship with his parents also reminds me of Beau is Afraid because Beau's mother clearly had a huge impact on his life. The Power of the Dog also has queer characters, involves the dynamic between mother and son, and like Call Me By Your Name, it depicts a teenage boy navigating repressed desires and sexual discovery, with an older man being the catalyst for that awakening. And like I'm Thinking of Ending Things, Jesse Plemons is in it. I Saw the TV Glow is a coming-of-age story like Call Me By Your Name, and like that film and Queer, it's about LGBTQ characters. Like I'm Thinking of Ending Things, it's about identity, and the passage of time feels distorted, and both films use art as a mirror for self-reflection, but in I'm Thinking of Ending Things, it's poetry, musicals, and movies, and in I Saw the TV Glow, it's a TV show. Like Beau is Afraid, it's a surreal journey and has a protagonist who seems alienated and afraid. And in one of your reviews for Queer, you wrote, it's about the fear of facing yourself, about the ways internalized shame and vulnerability can sabotage even the most beautiful connections. And I think that statement also sums up I Saw the TV Glow perfectly. I Killed My Mother is a queer coming-of-age film like Call Me By Your Name that depicts a complicated mother-son relationship like Beau is Afraid. Since you like Beau is Afraid, I think you might enjoy A Serious Man, which has a sort of similar tone where the story blends together dark comedy with tragedy, and it feels like everything is going wrong for the protagonist. And that protagonist happens to be played by the dad from Call Me By Your Name. The combination of I'm Thinking of Ending Things and Beau is Afraid makes me think you'd enjoy Synecdoche, New York, and it's not even because it was written and directed by Charlie Kaufman like I'm Thinking of Ending Things. I just think it explores a lot of the same themes and has a similar structure and tone. Speaking of Charlie Kaufman, what happened is one of his favorite films, and he cited it as an inspiration for his work. And I think you'd enjoy this one because you mentioned insecurities, fear, anxiety, and loneliness in your reviews for your four favorites, and this movie's got all of that. Y Tu Mama Tambien is a coming-of-age film that involves sexual discovery like Call Me By Your Name, but I initially wrote it down because something about it kind of reminds me of Queer, although maybe it's just because both films take place in Mexico. The Hourglass Sanatorium is surreal and psychological like I'm Thinking of Ending Things and Beau is Afraid. I even described this movie as Beau is Afraid for people with daddy issues instead of mommy issues. The combination of I'm Thinking of Ending Things and Beau is Afraid also makes me think you might like Inland Empire, which is a similarly surreal psychological film that feels like a nightmare. I know it isn't David Lynch's most accessible film, but you liked Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway, and judging by your reviews, you seem like someone who will take the time to try and make sense of what you're watching or enjoy the experience even if you can't comprehend what it means, and I would love to read your interpretation of it. Speaking of your reviews, I read all of your reviews for Queer, and I think they're really insightful, so if anyone watching this doesn't feel like they understood that movie, you should check those out. But based on what I read, I think you'd love Happy Together. The characters in Queer see the film Orpheus, and I think there are aspects of Queer's narrative that echo some of the ideas in this film. Since you like I'm Thinking of Ending Things, I think you'd enjoy A Beautiful Mind. There's even a scene in this film that inspired a scene in I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Since you like Beau is Afraid, I think you'd enjoy Defending Your Life, even though it's more of a comedy fantasy. But there's a scene in Beau is Afraid that reminded me so much of this film, and the director even cited it as an inspiration. Another film he cited as an inspiration that I think has a similar vibe is Songs from the Second Floor. In one of your reviews for Call Me By Your Name, you described it as a story about yearning, about longing for something you can never fully have. And with that in mind, another queer romance film that meets that description is Portrait of a Lady on Fire. And a few queer coming-of-age films I think you'd like since you like Call Me By Your Name are My Own Private Idaho, Moonlight, My Beautiful Laundrette, God's Own Country, and Beach Rats.